Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
Hello, everybody. You know what it is. It's the DEX show within a show. It's Reality Bytes. And it is an extra special episode because it is one of those episodes where we unveil, where we launch, where we announce, where we investigate and analyze a brand new Next Think report. This one is a two-part report called IT's New Mandate, the Science of Productivity. That's the name for both of them together, listeners. Part one, which we're going to be looking at today, came out just last week. It's called Transformation, Driving Adoption, Productivity, and Change in the AI Era. The report is based on exclusive survey data by our partners, our regular collaborators, I should say, Vanson Bourne. It's a survey of over 1,000 senior IT leaders, asking them about how they feel about navigating AI transformation and turning that technology into measurable business value. I really think across these two parts, and we'll get into the second part when the second part is launched in just a few weeks' time here on the show. But that second part, but across both parts, I think it really touches upon a lot of issues which we're hearing customers talk about, we're hearing analysts talk about, we're hearing all kinds of conversation around, and really excited to get into it. We are joined today by Sean, Dina, Megan, and Oriana. So minus Tim, almost the full Reality Bites panel. Tim is still sleeping off his DEX World Tour, of course, and having some well-earned PTO. But Sean, let's get to you first of all, because we're very lucky in that you are the author of this fantastic report, and of course helped shape the survey from the ground up. So first of all, Sean, tell us about the motivation behind launching it. What was the intention, and why now?
Sure thing. Yeah. So I think a couple of factors came into deciding to come out with this survey. Obviously, in the markets nowadays, there's a lot of unpredictability. You have AI always kind of being introduced each year with new promises, but also just the way that the economic markets are happening right now. There's a lot of focus on what does it mean to be productive. And it's one thing that we've talked about before in the past, but we really wanted to shape a survey around that theme. And then, I mean, selfishly as well, just for us, I think we have a lot of cool features with our product that can speak to that. So the timing was right to do it now, just internally with NextThink, but as well as kind of externally with what's going on in the world.
And that concept that you just alluded to, Sean, what the two reports together go under the banner of the science of productivity, a bold idea. What does the phrase mean in the context of this research?
Sure. Yeah. So I think there are like a couple central tenets to what we found with the data. So there's a big focus and excitement for AI. There's a big focus also on digital adoption and IT shifting to really make that a central tenet of what they're doing in the future. And then, of course, digital employee experience, something that we've always talked about and is always central to pulling the pieces together. But really, in order to stay competitive in the future, amidst that backdrop of change, IT kind of has to rewire its strategy, and it has to become a little bit more scientific with its approach and what it means by productivity. So that's kind of how we coined that term. And I think one thing that it kind of makes it obvious, but the leaders that responded to this survey, they came back, 97% of them say that improving digital productivity is the key mission for IT. Obviously, it's a big change from like years ago when probably their key mission was, dropping tickets or lowering their MTTR, things like that. It's clearly shifted over the years and really indicative that the times are changing.
If I could sneak in an extra question, Sean, what do you see that connection between the themes of this part one of the report, adoption, and AI specifically, with that theme of productivity? How do you see that connecting?
So I mean, obviously, a lot of the AI tools that we're seeing can help with adoption problems. And we've kind of pointed to that throughout the survey, but there's also stuff that goes beyond the technology when it comes to just kind of managing people and communication And I think that's what is going to set up nicely in part two, which I won't reveal too much, but there's going to require some management changes or possible mergers between people, and not just inside IT, but outside. So it's kind of a cool survey because it gives you a wide scope on the problem and kind of points to different aspects just from like the ITSM world, but as well as just kind of a people management perspective.
And we should emphasize to listeners, Sean, the authenticity of these surveys. I mean, obviously, we sense and suspect there's a story we want to tell, and there's a story we expect the industry to reflect back to us to some degree. But there's always that lovely sense of anticipation where you don't know what the data is going to be. You don't really know what you're going to find out. And on that point, what were you most surprised about by this data when it finally came back to us? Were there any sort of concrete disconnects or contradictions that really stood out in particular?
Yeah, personally, I think when you're writing it and probably reading it, I hope the most interesting parts for me are kind of the gotcha moments. We don't try to be sneaky with these surveys, but we set up questions to try to understand the logic behind business leaders, and there were several of them in terms of kind of overestimating one's DEX or how to calculate one's ROI. One stat that really pointed to this contradiction or a gotcha moment was that 94% say they can prove the value of new investments. And then later on the survey, we found out that 93% came back and said they struggle to identify underperforming ones. So underperforming investments, which is kind of contradictory in that regard. And then I actually have another one that I didn't really know, or I suppose maybe the Tim Flowers of the world would know this, but I didn't. But one of the stats was that 69% agree they would definitely change SaaS providers more often if the cost of adoption were lower. So it's almost like they're being strong-armed to kind of stay in certain relationships with SaaS providers, and just because of the fear of a high cost to then carry out an adoption project, which was pretty interesting to me.
And one of the sort of themes that underpins the report, and I think we'll kind of run through this discussion quite kind of conspicuously, is that of digital dexterity. Why do you think this emerged as a central thread across these themes in part one, through AI, through adoption, through productivity? And I think you just touched upon something that's relevant to it in that idea of the cost of adoption when it comes to sort of being held hostage, if you will, by your apps.
Yeah, for sure. So obviously, like getting a digital project or a new software in play is a lot of work, but then it comes down to the people and how comfortable they are using it. So I think digital dexterity is like a real linchpin in kind of holding this whole thing together. So new technologies they're only beneficial if like employees are actually using them. And as simple as that sounds, a lot of the IT leaders admit that they can't entirely solve that part of the equation. So there's a big emphasis on that and focus. 95% agree that that's a big part of success to the organization, but only 47% came back and said that their workforce today is ready to adopt digital tools at scale.
Fantastic. It's a great piece of work, Sean. Thank you so much. Oriana, so we were circulating this new report, a pre-release copy last week, Oriana, so that everybody got a chance to read it, to look at it, to gather their thoughts and their takes for this recording. And you report back, you've been doing some in-depth qualitative research on, if I recall correctly, AI adoption. Do I have that right, Oriana? Is that accurate?
Yeah. I've been really focused on AI dexterity for all of the reasons that Sean has mentioned, right? Like we know that this is a pressing concern for our customers, so we're trying to make
Yeah.
sure that we are going to be giving them the tools they need to do that.
Well, so interested to hear more about it. How long has the project been going on? What's it involved? And I guess you can flow into your findings as naturally as you like.
Sure, yeah. So this has been my main focus over the past few months. I've been working with a lot of our different project managers, and if there are customers listening to this, I'm sure a few of them will have been part of those conversations because we've been speaking to a lot of different customers about their challenges, their goals, as well as a number of people who aren't customers of ours. We interview people in a lot of different roles, because one of the things that Sean mentioned, right, is that a lot of this stuff isn't just happening in the traditional IT rooms that we're used to. It's issues that touch on so many different parts of organizations. So we've been really trying to understand, what does that look like in practice? Who's involved? And what do they need in order to drive the adoption of AI to get to these productivity improvements? And also, that's one of the biggest challenges too that I've heard, is that there are so many teams involved that it does require breaking down traditional silos and being able to cross collaborate with different groups that have different goals.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What is the expectation for how this process of coming digital disruption looks like as compared to previous waves? And how clear do you think the expectations are around it, in terms of the types of applications, the types of impacts it makes on the types of the different professional impacts it makes on different areas of the business?
Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that I hope people find comforting is that some of it will be the same. It's just going to be applied in a new domain. So one of the things that I've heard is that organizations are leaning heavily on their existing processes for evaluating tools, for getting things implemented. But the ones that are really most mature are the ones that have dedicated change management teams that can really tackle the challenges that we've been hearing about and talking about also in general, right? Like, in previous episodes, we've talked a lot about how massive tech stacks are nowadays, right? Organizations have so many different types of software. That's something that's translating to AI as well, right? Organizations don't have an AI tool. They have a variety of SaaS tools, many of which have AI, plus potentially a dedicated Gen AI. A lot of them even have more than one Gen AI focused on productivity. So that's part of both the benefit and the challenge, is that we have existing processes for this, and none of those challenges are going away that already exist. They're just being applied to a whole new domain. Actually, there's a great quote. Somebody said, "I need an AI for my AI," because he's managing. This was a CIO who is managing, so many different AI tools, and so that's the kind of thing they need, is that cross visibility, the ability to also tackle the human side, right? So
Yep.
some of the other big challenges that we've heard and that are reflected in these surveys as well is, how do you address the human side of change? And that's where having dedicated teams can really help. But there's a lot of different ways to tackle that. Some of them are building AI to be more human-centric, helping people upskill. That's a perennial topic. But also understanding and addressing people's reservations and fears around AI. I think that part is really unique, because it is culturally a very novel concept.
Yes.
And a lot of the people I've spoke to are trying to figure out, how do we understand what prevents people from adopting, not just from a technical perspective, but from a human perspective? Because people can have the right tools, but if they don't use them, you're not going to get that value improvement.
Totally. And Oriana, 94% in the survey believe that their business's success over the next 3 years does depend upon its ability as a business to adapt to and to ultimately use AI technologies effectively. This is a qualitative difference in the impact of this particular form of technology. No, you couldn't have said, I would suggest, the same thing about Teams or about Out. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, communication tools which help the business run a bit more smoothly are different to tools which will help the business compete. And I wonder if you have a view on what this means for IT.
Yeah. So I would say one of the great things about having conversations with people, and one of the reasons why we always use a combination of surveys and interviews, right? That's why we do this kind of research in parallel, is that there are certain nuances that are harder for people to, I think, talk about in a way that it's hard to put it in a business pitch, right? So one of the things that I keep hearing in conversations is, there's a lot of hype around AI, and we don't want to be left behind. But there's often a lack of clarity in, how do we actually get to value? How do we get beyond, oh, this is a neat little productivity improvement to actual value impacts. Because I think in a lot of organizations, it is currently a little bit like Teams, right? It just makes your life a little bit smoother,
Sure.
improves convenience. So how do we channel that into making sure that we are really getting these big value improvements? And how do we sort through hype, which is very real, and not get left behind, right? So finding that balance, threading the path between big claims and not missing out on big improvements.
Absolutely. And I mean, look, we've a digital employee experience show. We've got a certain biased perspective, but it is easy to see how in that dynamic that you describe, whereby organizations want to be judicious about their investment. They don't want to jump too soon. They don't want to be too slow either. The kind of visibility that DEX offers becomes potentially a quite kind of significant tool for IT teams. I always expect nothing but complete honesty and objectivity from you. However, Oriana, do you think that's the case? To what extent would you agree that this is so? And maybe how does DEX have to evolve to really deliver full value in this area in the next few years?
Yeah, so the thing that immediately came to mind when you mentioned this was the stat in the survey around how IT sometimes struggles to get buy-in from other parts of the business.
Right.
The survey said it was like 68% said this is a challenge. And this just definitely reflects some of the things that I've heard in conversation, is that you've got a lot of different teams that have end goals and different mindsets about these types of problems, right? So I think a big chunk of getting everybody on the same page and actually getting to digital dexterity is about really understanding all these different agendas, right? Like it's very easy for us to think of a company as a single entity, but it's not. It's a collection of people.
Mm-hmm.
And different people are just going to be having really different experiences with AI when there are so many tools, when there is such a range in quality. So how do we get that to those real world outcomes? Well, first you have to understand what are the real world outcomes that these different entities require. And I think the organizations that manage to build a culture where trial and error is safe,
Mm-hmm.
and there are, good sandboxes, good collaborations, that's where they're going to really discover how to do that.
Fascinating. So glad you happened to be serendipitously conducting those interviews as we were developing this survey, Oriana. Fascinating stuff. Megan, I know we don't have you for too long today, sadly, so let's talk a bit about digital adoption specifically, another key theme running throughout the survey. First of all, let's be really concrete and give a definition of what we're talking about in this context, because adoption can be a bit of a sort of a broad and amorphous term, I find.
Yeah, definitely. And first, I just want to say, Oriana, it's always such a pleasure to listen to you talk on this podcast, even though I know I'm also on this podcast. But you always say things where I'm like, yeah, that too. So I'm probably going to be echoing you in some of my answers here. But always just so insightful and so funny you were doing that same research at the same time as us.
Agreed, Megan, agreed.
I know, so great. But okay, so adoption. Adoption it's essentially the kind of like unspoken need underpinning a lot of what you and Oriana just spoke about, right? It's a concrete strategy and then also tool set that a business can put in place to help their people adopt or be able to use the technology that's being given to them. So it's one thing to just kind of, put in place a new technology. Maybe you host a Zoom webinar for everyone where you run through what the tool can do, and then you say, have at it, right? That's not going to get everybody using the tool. That's going to cause a lot of problems. People are going to have challenges. They're going to run into roadblocks. They're not going to know how to use the tools. They're going to slow down. And over time, like your business productivity is going to slow down. So adoption is taking a more proactive approach, whether it's through strategy or tool set, to put the tools in front of your people and the training in front of your people so that they can use the technology you're providing to them kind of as soon as possible.
And I think maybe some of the echoes between your points and Oriana's will come out here. But the report does make clear there's a connection between adoption, support, and successful AI rollouts. And Oriana enumerated a number of reasons that AI rollouts present certain kind of innate kind of cultural adoption challenges to people.
Yeah.
What stood out to you in the report, and what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So there's a big one, right? The 96% say digital adoption support, it needs a boost to help employees adapt to AI. And one thing that Oriana said that I was like, oh yeah, I hadn't concretely thought about that, but it was absolutely correct. Sometimes I think when we're having conversations about AI, or maybe non-technical people, we're just thinking we're talking about the chat GPTs, right? The co-pilots. But there's AI in everything now. Every tool you open up is like, hey, do you want to use my AI thing? And I think you have to remember also, like Oriana was saying, the human behind it. Some people in your workplace are going to feel very excited about all this new AI being put in front of them. And every time a piece of software says, hey, do you want to try our new AI co-pilot? They're going to say, yeah. And they're going to start interacting with it right away. And they're going to figure out how it helps them move through their day more quickly. But then you're also going to have the people who are resistant to it, who are, whether it's, the fear, oh, AI is going to take my job, or simply, they were the last person to get an iPhone, and that they're also going to be the last person to use AI, right? Like, there's just some people who don't adapt to new technology quickly, and those people are going to need a different strategy and a different approach to get them to start employing AI and understanding the ways in which AI is going to help them, do their job more quickly and more easily. So I think that's where that digital adoption support needs a boost, right? You not only need more or maybe new approaches to digital adoption support, because AI is a new tool, a new functionality, but you need to be able to do that more personalized approach at scale if you want to have AI sort of impacting the productivity of all teams across your business.
And across the business, where do you see organizations typically falling short when it comes to adoption? Tooling, timing, training, all of the above?
I think it comes back to that personalized approach. I think a lot of times organizations may take a one-size-fits-all approach to adoption, or they rely on the documentation and the training that sort of comes with the tools that they're onboarding. But 61% of IT, we found this in the survey too, say that there are just too many users for them to support adoption adequately. So that's that personalization at scale, right? If you feel that you have too many people to support, it means there's too many unique needs and you can't sort of adapt to them and to what they need. But actually, if you can have the right tool in place that can add on to the adoption that comes with the tools that you're putting in place, I think you can create those sort of slightly more personalized experiences where you could put tool tips in place for your employees to use. You could have a pop-up window that shares documentation that they might need in that moment. You could have a writing assistant that shows them where to write and what to write. So it meets them kind of where they're at in the moment as they're trying to use the tool, and kind of can help address that, there's too many people for us to help.
Here's a classic chicken or egg question for you, Megan. Do you
Uh-huh.
think adoption builds digital dexterity over time, or is dexterity a prerequisite for good adoption?
I have a strong feeling on this one, and I hope it will make. If there's anyone listening to this, which probably not, I think our audience are very technical people, but if there's anyone in the audience who's like, I don't feel like I have good digital dexterity, I find new tools difficult to use.
Yeah.
I don't think you're a lost cause. I think that good adoption builds digital dexterity over time. But I think that the emphasis on that is good adoption, right? Is it a thoughtful adoption strategy, one that comes from a cross-functional team, also what Oriana was saying earlier, where you communicate with the business owner of the application. You communicate with different user groups to understand their needs, and you provide the tools, the tool tips, the guides, whatever it is, however people want to learn, to give them the tools so they can feel confident using the technology given to them. I think that the human brain is a beautiful, beautiful thing, and it's far more plastic than we realize, no matter how old we get. So we all have the ability to learn how to use the software supplied to us. We just need someone to teach us in the way that makes sense to us.
Beautifully said. Thank you so much, Megan. And last but certainly not least, it's our resident AI seer, Dina. Dina, 96% of the surveyed agreed that AI will significantly transform how their business operates within 3 years. The report stipulates that we could be on the verge of the most intense period of digital transformation ever seen. We've heard from Oriana on this side from her interviews, but from your experience working with digital workplace teams, does this feel true?
Absolutely. We're seeing a real shift here. AI isn't just another wave of change this time, it's reshaping the way work happens. And IT teams are no longer just supporting the systems, they're really redesigning experiences. So they are doing their best that, like you said, 96% are enhancing the digital adoption support. And they understand that it's very essential to help all employees to actually adapt to AI, which reflects in real life what we're facing on the ground. Transformation is accelerating super fast, and it's deeper and more strategic than ever before. So totally agree with that.
I guess to develop that theme, what stood out to you about how IT leaders are thinking about digital transformation in the AI era, maybe as against previous eras of digital transformation, but maybe just in its own right? Is it distinct from previous waves, however?
Correct. It's very different because this time IT isn't just reacting, which finally they are leading. They're focused on business value, not just the implementation or just plug and play of the applications or systems in place. And 94% believe that their success over the next 3 years depends on the adaptability or the ability to use AI technologies effectively. They're thinking about user experience, they're thinking about adoption and ROI differently than they used to be in the past. And there's a huge emphasis on AI's role in productivity, and IT leaders are becoming real partners in driving the business growth instead of just being reactive and cost center as it used to be perceived in the past.
Excellent. And your view on how digital dexterity factors into this transformation process, the degree to which it is or is not a critical success factor?
It's 100%. AI is only as powerful as the people behind it who are using it, right? So that's why, like earlier mentioned, 96% they really believe that improving digital adoption is important for the digital dexterity. And helping employees become more confident and adaptable with technology is the anchor, like Sean and Oriana highlighted earlier. Without it, even the best AI tools are going to fall flat, right? So we need to first look at the people behind the technology and people who are behind AIs.
Amazing. And I think that as everybody here who talks to people out there in the digital workplace can attest to, these are big preoccupations at the moment. If you're interested in how your business is preparing for AI transformation, if any of these topics are significant to you, if digital adoption is a significant priority to your digital workplace team, we absolutely encourage you to download this report and to prepare for part 2 of it as well, which we'll pick up again in a few weeks' time here on this very show. But there is a link to the report, of course, in the show notes. And I should stress, it's completely free for you to own, download, and read. So please do check it out. Please do let us know what you think of it. Look, thank you so much, everybody, for your contributions to this discussion. Oriana, we would love to have you guest on the DEX Hub to hear some more about this research that you've been doing. I think that would be a great addition to this kind of to this season of AI transformation, content and thought leadership that we're currently kind of embarking on. So you should connect with Sean after the show. And just for remains for me to say thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you soon.
Bye.
To make sure that you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, make sure to leave a rating of the show. Just tap the number of stars you think the podcast deserves. If you'd like to learn more about how NextThink can help you improve your digital employee experience, head over to nextthink.com. Thank you so much for listening.